Hello, Jason Fladlien here, and welcome to this wonderful 6 and 6 coaching training. Today we're going to be talking about personal development. If you can hear my voice okay and see that title screen, just let me know. Go ahead and type in yep into the questions box. All right, Kathy and Jillian, first responders, that's always good. Michael and Marie, Alan, Lynn, Jeremy, good to see you. Good to see everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad to be alive again after being sick this week, but we'll change that. Personal development, I'm going to start this off this session, and this is going to be maybe a longer session than normal. I put a lot of stuff in here. I think you're going to get a lot of benefit. And just to kind of frame the whole thing, I'm going to start this off with two quotes. The first one is by Dan Kennedy, and Dan Kennedy says it's all about personal development. A lot of people don't realize this, but Dan Kennedy, he's one of the biggest direct marketing names, gurus, so to speak, in the world. He used to run a personal development store, and it didn't make him any money. And he said he found out it was much easier selling make money stuff than it was to sell personal development stuff. But he said, to put this in context, he says at the end of the day, it's all about personal development. And I think it summarizes it nicely with the second quote I have here, which is by Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn says you're affected by two things: what you know and how you feel about what you know. So the Jason Fladlien way of stating it would be like this. If we wanted to relate it directly to internet marketing, it's simple. If I showed you the easiest way in the world to make a ton of money, but you were scared out of your mind to actually go out and do it, even though it was super easy, what would happen? What would be the most likely scenario for most people if I sat down and showed them the coolest, easiest, simplest way to make a ton of money, but it freaked them out when they saw themselves going out there and trying to do it? Yeah, the answer is nothing would happen. So that's not the what you know, but it's also how you feel about what you know. And if you don't feel comfortable, if you feel freaked out of your mind, you're probably not going to do it. On the other hand, if I showed you a simple way just to make a reasonable amount of money, nothing earth-shattering, but say a couple $1,000s a month, but you felt rock solid, 100% sure and confident that you could do it, and you would feel great doing it. Now what's the result? The result is, for most people, they're actually going to go out there and do it. Isn't that interesting? So it's not just what you know, it's how you feel about what you know. And a lot of this has to deal with personal development. And so many people forget that. I see people, and this is what I like to call it, they have one foot on the brake and one foot on the gas, and they're trying to go somewhere. On one hand, they're trying to do this thing, and on the other hand, I can see that unconsciously they haven't reconciled it enough to feel congruent with actually doing it. And believe it or not, that's the source of problem for many people when they try to make money online. Now, here's the conundrum. Here's where it gets tricky. Most wealth is not in your comfort zone. It's outside of your comfort zone. In fact, most wealth is barely outside of your comfort zone. It's not even that far outside of your comfort zone. But the fact is, and this is a Jason Fladlien quote from 2012, becoming wealthy is an uncomfortable process. That's the gap that we have to bridge. We have to somehow feel good enough, in spite of being uncomfortable, to expand our comfort zone, because that's where most of the wealth lies. Just directly, slightly outside of your comfort zone right now. And it's the same whether you're trying to make dollar number one or you're trying to make $10 million. I've had to learn things this year that were previously way outside of my comfort zone, that were out of my comfort zone when I began this year, and that I've slowly assimilated and brought inside my comfort zone. So when we talk about getting into that additional comfort zone area where we can expand and feel more comfortable so we can get more wealthy and get more money, there's really 4 pillars of personal growth that are going to allow us to do that. There's the philosophy that we have towards love. There's incremental improvements. There's also exponential improvements. And then finally, there's the refinement of values. Okay, and Chris asked, can you give us the examples of what you learned so we can relate. I believe I'm going to do that throughout this presentation, Chris, but an example this year of what I learned that previously I wasn't comfortable doing in our business. Is that what you're asking? I can name 20 of them. But one of the big ones that we had is we hired a whole bunch of new people this year and last year. Like Dave's on the call right now recording this. Dave was one of our newer employees that we hired. And I'd never really managed any employees before, and Will does most of the management. But I had to learn how to manage and deal with employees, and that's something I never thought I would ever be comfortable doing. That I'm still just now trying to figure out myself. and that's just one of them. The other thing that is very hard for me is the overhead. We have a lot of overhead in our business, and managing overhead. That's something that I never would have experienced before. But those are all good things when you learn how to use them properly. But again, the difference, though, is I continue to expand my comfort zone when you compare us, like Wilson and I, to some other marketers that seem to never grow. Like they hit a certain peak, and I'm sure you could think of many marketers. They hit that peak, and then their business never seems to get any bigger. That's because even successful marketers doing 6 or 7 figures a year sometimes, are content with what they're doing, and they get comfortable, and therefore they stagnate. So let's now break down the 4 pillars of personal growth that's going to help you get out of your comfort zone, get you to grow more so you can be more, so you can do more, so you can have more. All right? First, we have to understand with wealth that wealth is far more than just money. Wealth, by my definition, is an abundance of anything. So if you want to look at it kind of ironically, you could say a lot of people are very wealthy at finding the wrong way to do something. I have a wealth of great ways to mess something up. You could look at it that way. And would you be wrong in looking at it that way? No. So wealth is just an abundance of anything. So what do you want to be wealthy in? Notice that money is not listed on this list of some of the things that I love to be wealthy in. I love to be wealthy with freedom. I love to be wealthy in the form of energy and happiness. Happiness is my favorite thing to be wealthy in. Excitement. If you haven't seen or heard that I'm very excited very much a lot of the time, yeah, you haven't paid attention. That's something I love to be wealthy in. And there's a lot of other things that I love to be wealthy in as well. But think about this. Does money help you be wealthy in freedom? Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I was sick earlier this week, I didn't have to call in, you know. Energy, does money help you with that? Yeah. So many people waste so much energy thinking about, well, what am I going to do because I don't have any money. I can't pay these bills. I waste a lot of energy like that. So money can help with that. And obviously, one of the phrases I hate the most that I hear more than I'd like to is money isn't everything. Okay? I hope you don't use that phrase. Money isn't everything. That's like saying the grass isn't the water. That should be such a self-evident of a statement that it doesn't even need to be said. Okay, obviously, money isn't everything. And money can't buy happiness, you know? Nothing can buy happiness. Happiness isn't for sale. Happiness is a state. But I want to be wealthy in happiness. And can money be a tool that can be used to help me with that? I think it can be, and so forth. So you have to really understand what do you want to be wealthy in, and what's the money going to do to help you be wealthy with it. And one of my favorite things is when somebody says money isn't everything, I love to say this to them: yeah, it is. And just say that and see what they say. Money is everything. Yeah, it is. It is. Okay. Now here's the easiest way to become wealthy overall. Remember, we're talking about philosophy. I'm going to get to some very specific technical stuff, some actual strategies and tactics and step-by-step exercises we're going to do here in a little bit. But again, we're in the philosophy right now. When it comes to becoming wealthy, it's this. The easiest way to become wealthy is to give far more than you receive. This is called the wealth paradox. All right? The easiest way to become wealthy is to give more than you receive. It's paradoxical. Because it seems on the surface of it that if you give, then you have less to get, right? If I'm giving everything away, how can I get wealthy? All right? But the easiest way to become wealthy is to give far more than you receive. Now, this works with two principles. First principle, we deal with intangibles. We don't deal with just tangibles. So with tangibles, if I give you an apple, that's one less apple that I can get, right? Okay? But the intangibleness is maybe the ingenuity of me to be able to grow trees that can produce apples. And then maybe I can charge you for those apples. Now I'm starting to make money. Okay, the second principle here is, principle number one is the intangibleness. Principle number two is money is not a zero-sum property. And we'll talk more about this. But here's the problem, the biggest problem that people have either consciously or unconsciously when it comes to money. Okay, I was reading Reddit. So Reddit is one of my favorite places to go on the internet. And here's a very popular comment on Reddit one day. It was on some sort of thread about CEOs that are overcompensated. Okay, so this person has 113 people who have given him an upvote. And here's what he says, okay? They're talking about a CEO who makes $15 million a year, all right? He goes, even if he or she is working 12 hours a day, 365 days a year, $15 million amounts to $3,500 an hour. I make $15 an hour, and I work decently hard. I doubt anyone is working 230 times as hard as I am. Perhaps 10 to 20 times as hard, but not 230 times. And then I love this little stab at the end. It's just pure greed. Okay? So this is a popular sentiment among the masses, the public, that, hey, I make X number of dollars an hour. This person who makes $15 million a year can't work 230 times or 500 times as hard as I do. Therefore, they're getting something they shouldn't be getting. It's unfair. Okay? I would guess that out of everybody here on this call, live or listening, there's probably 3% of you who believe that. Maybe not consciously, but unconsciously, in the back of your mind, you might agree with that on some level, okay? On some level, you might agree with that, okay? It might not be as obvious. It might be a little bit indirectly, but let me ask you this question. Okay? Is it fair? Is it fair that this happens? That somebody can work a lot less hard and make a lot more money? Is that fair? It's an excellent question. Okay? The answer is it's not fair. Okay? It's not fair. And that's wonderful. It's wonderful that that's not fair. If it was fair, we would all have the same thing. And I don't know about you, but I call that hell. If every single one of us had the exact same thing, and there was no opportunity to grow, and there was no opportunity to change, thank God it's not fair. Okay? So this isn't a matter of being fair. Okay? A lot of people say this ain't fair. Well, good point. It's not fair. I'm glad it's not fair. It shouldn't be fair. All right? Shouldn't be fair. All right? What this is the way it is. This is just how it is. Okay? And you can either get mad at it or you can understand it. And you can start asking questions. Like, how is it possible that somebody can make $3,500 an hour? Okay? One of the ways they can do that is by giving far more than they receive. So do you suppose the CEO of a company, a major Fortune 500 company who's compensated $15 million a year, is giving more than a person who makes $15 an hour? Okay? I would say they are on some level. They're probably giving more. Okay? I'll tell you one way they're giving more, and every business owner with a lot of employees can agree, is Your brain is never off the clock, okay? It's not. You think I'm not thinking about business in some form or another on a Sunday night when I'm sitting down watching television? I can't not think about it, okay? But when I was making $10 an hour working for the city of Muscatine, going around in those little trucks sucking up the leaves during the fall and all that fun stuff, do you think I was thinking about that on a Sunday night? No. Okay? So I guarantee you the CEO, they don't work 12 hours a day, okay? They work 24 hours a day. You don't turn that off. They give more, okay? So part of it is, yeah, they give a lot more. The second part of it is, do they have more responsibility? Absolutely, they have more responsibility. So it seems that having more responsibility, meaning that therefore you can give more responsibility, that you should probably be more compensated more, okay? So some of it's the value, you know, some of it is the value they provide, although it could very easily be argued with some of these CEOs, the way they run the company, $15 an hour employee probably could have provided more value. Okay, so it's not all about the value, though. In some instances, it's just sheer luck. Okay? Is it fair that I can go and buy a lottery ticket and win the big Powerball and make $320 million? Okay, that's not fair either, but who cares? We call that luck. There's a little bit of luck involved, but the whole point of it is I want to position myself so that way I can give the most value. I can have the most chance to become lucky, okay? And regardless, if I have an abundance of skills to provide to the marketplace, I'm going to be at a much better position to make money, all right? Finally, if I understand this, I will be more congruent with my actions, correct? Because remember what we said, it's not just what you know, it's how you feel about what you know. If you felt like this poor fool who's making $15 an hour and is all pissed off that somebody's making 230 times that without working 230 times hard, do you think that's going to make it a lot harder for this person to make money? It's going to be almost impossible with that kind of a mindset. So you got to sit down with yourself. And this is what really was a big breakthrough for me on the how I feel part, where I felt a lot more congruent with making a whole bunch of money and making it as fast as possible. All right? I sat down and said, here are all the hard issues that I have with money and wealth. And I'm going to hammer through each one by one until I deal with these issues. Have you ever sat down and had that conversation with yourself? If not, you should. That thing will be so valuable to you. There's so many hard questions. I'm going to ask a couple of them on this call. And then I'm going to have you ask me a couple hard ones too. All right? Now think about it this way. Let's look at it another way. This is the wonderful world of capitalism at work. If I spend 50 hours developing a system, and I charge $19.95 for that system, and this system, you give me 20 bucks for it. But this system saves you 10 hours of figuring it out yourself. And that's the tangible. Okay? It also saves you the stress and the headache and uncertainty of figuring it out yourself. That's the intangible. Guess what happens? You win because I just saved you 10 hours of time. So even if you're making $15 an hour like the last person was, I just saved you $150. Would you pay me 20 bucks to save you $150? I hope you would. Okay? Now I win. I win because I only have to do this once, but I can sell this to many, right? So I can win because if I sell 1,000 copies of this and I've only spent 50 hours doing it, all of a sudden I'm making what that CEO's making an hour almost, right? So it doesn't matter to you, and it doesn't matter to me. This is wealth in internet marketing. But notice how I gave more, right? If I just took that 50 hours and kept it to myself, I'm going to be less wealthy. But by giving and giving more than I ask in return, that's how we become wealthy. All right? Now, this beauty is I can sell this system to 1 million people, and I can make that CEO-style wages. I get rich. I deliver value to my customers that exceeds the money they exchange for that value, but I could not do this if I didn't give more than I received. This is the beauty of wealth. This is why everybody should be wealthy, right? Because you have to give more than you receive, and there's nothing wrong with that. Specifically related to money, money is not finite, and a lot of people make this misunderstanding. I've had economists make this misunderstanding that I've talked to, okay? Money is not finite. For example, there's more money today in existence right now than there was a year ago. Next year, I guarantee you there will be more money in existence than there was this year. Every year, through the Great Depression, before and after the Great Depression, there was more money than the previous years. Okay? And I mean, we could get into a finer point of the discussion, say, well, maybe the money doesn't buy as much as it did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Yeah, we can get into that discussion. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm just saying is there's more money than there's ever been, okay? And that's because how money is created. And that's the word. It's created, okay? We're not on the gold standard, all right? The world as a whole is not on the gold standard. All right? The governments are making the money. They're printing it, and they're putting it into circulation. So there's more money today than there was yesterday or last year. Now here's the bigger point, though. The bigger point to all this is you making $1 million doesn't make it significantly harder for someone else to make $1 million. Do you get that? If you made $1 million by next year, that's not going to really affect somebody else's chances of making $1 million. Okay? In fact, you taking that $1 million out of circulation, so to speak, there's some flaw in that logic right there alone, but that's how some people look at it. Let's just say, though, in fact, you taking out $1 million from circulation is like taking a drop of water out of the ocean. Okay? So if every single one of us on this call make $1 million by this time next year, and it's my mom's birthday today, so by my mom's birthday next year, we all make $1 million, is that going to greatly affect anybody who's not on this call, their chance of making $1 million? Nope. Not at all, right? Okay, it will affect it. It will affect it at the same rate it would be as if I took one drop of water out of the ocean. That's what it's going to affect it about that much, okay? Would you believe that most people do not understand this when it comes to wealth? They're brought up on grade school economics, right? Johnny has 6 apples. Johnny gives Kathy 3 apples. How many apples does Johnny have left? 3, right? No, because Johnny sold those apples to Kathy. He took the money. He bought 3 apples to replace the ones that he sold to Kathy, and he took the extra money, and he went down to the bar and got himself a beer, right? That's what he did, okay? So, you know, real-world economics doesn't work that way, but a lot of people think that it does. Listen to the upcoming elections if you're in the United States. You're going to hear that argument all over the place. People don't understand how money works. They just don't get it. So therefore, if you don't understand how it works, it's going to be infinitely harder for you to make it. So you have to clear all these incongruences. So you have to come to the grips with the fact is, if I make $1 billion, that's not going to affect anybody else. I'm not taking anybody else's opportunity away from them. In fact, I'm actually creating more opportunities. Now, here's another hard question you have to ask yourself. If I become wealthy, or when I become wealthy, will this cause envy, jealousy, scorn, and other things like that? Here's the answer. It will. It will. Okay? It will cause envy. It will cause jealousy. It will cause scorn. Okay? I have seen it even with significant others. Wife goes off and makes a whole bunch of money. You think her husband would be happy, right? He's pissed. What the hell? I've seen this with families. Kid goes off, makes $1 million. Think dad and mom would be excited, right? They're pissed. What the hell? What's going on here? Okay, this is the deal. This is just the way that it is. A lot of this has to relate to the fact is most people don't understand how money and wealth really work. So therefore, they get mad at you if you get a lot of it. Okay? And this is something you're just going to have to deal with. Now, it's good to know about this ahead of time. Okay? But if you don't have a plan to deal with this, you might be subconsciously blocking yourself from making wealth. Consciously, you might be trying your darndest, but not realizing that you might be self-sabotaging yourself. You might be self-sabotaging if you haven't come to grips with this. How am I going to deal with it when this happens? Because it will happen, okay? Some of the things that I've heard and that you will hear is, oh, he's changed. She's changed. They're different now. They're different now. You know, I liked them better when blah. I get this with everything. When I first became a vegetarian about 8 years ago, people will tell me all the time, oh, Jason, I really loved you when you would eat that big fat burger. You know, you were so fun. We just go down and eat a steak or whatever. Like, okay, you're mad because I can't relate to you in that one specific way anymore, right? Not the fact that you're not happy that I'm trying to positively change my lifestyle. It's not why. You're mad because I'm different than you, okay? We were once the same, and now we are different. And you have to reflect on your own decisions and why you ended up where you ended up and I ended up where I ended up, and you have to come to grips with it. And you can either accept it or you can play the blame game. And unfortunately, most people play the blame game. The smart ones, they love you for it. They see what you did. They're happy. But not everybody's smart, unfortunately. Yeah, and Vivian says a really good point. You know, when Oprah lost all that weight, a lot of people got pissed off about it. And what happened? She ended up gaining it all back and then some. So Oprah's not impervious to these problems. Okay, but you'll get that. You'll get the greed part. Remember when that person talked about greed earlier? Okay, let me pose a scenario for you. Can you be poor and greedy? Some of the greediest people I know are poor. Some of the greediest people I know are poor and have never been rich. On the other hand, some of the most generous people I know are wealthy. Consider this. Bill Gates has given more money away than the 6th richest person in the world has made. Let me say that again. Bill Gates has given more money away than the 6th richest person in the world has made. Okay? So greed has nothing to do with money. Okay? I know people who will steal the last chocolate bar from their children who are on welfare and always have been on welfare. They're greedy. That's greed. Okay? And a lot of other things. Okay? So greed has nothing to do with money. Okay? And I'll tell you what, if it did, if greed was one of the requisites for becoming wealthy, then there would be a lot less wealthy people in this world because greed typically makes you poor. Okay? Greed is when people say, oh man, I made all this money over here, now I'm going to take it and throw it all into the real estate market, which I know nothing about, and become broke 4 years later. Okay? Greed is usually self-corrected in the marketplace. It's like, that's not an issue really, okay? And then the other one, taking advantage of other people, all right? I don't know if you've ever heard me refer to this before. When I talk about capitalism, the definition of capitalism is capitalizing off of other people's resources. I say that, and I proudly say that. I don't see a negative implication with that statement. Capitalism is capitalizing off of other people's resources. Where's the negative implication in that? There's only a negative implication to that if you think of negative scenarios where you could do that. Okay? But if you're thinking of negative scenarios where you can do that, and that's like what keeps coming to your mind, then where is your mind at? Right? Okay? And my favorite one, not everyone can have it as nice as you. And again, I say, isn't that wonderful? Okay? If everybody had it exactly the same, what kind of life would we be living? So these are some of the ways that I understand and deal with this issue, and already prepped myself to deal with it before it even happened, because I knew becoming wealthy was going to be an eventuality for me. So I said, well, when I get there, I better know what to do with these kind of things. All right? And you should know what to do with them. Well, once you clear this up and become congruent with it, then it's easy to be harmonious both with your conscious and your unconscious to move more rapidly to the wealth goal. And I know we're espousing philosophy right now, and you may disagree with some of it, and that's completely fine. We don't have to agree with everything. But this is the philosophy. You have to develop your own to shape your wealth so you're congruent with it. Soon we will get into exact techniques to hone your personal development. Okay, so like I was saying, you have to come up with your own personal philosophy. One of my favorite ones that I developed is this: since they'll bite the hands that feed them, I'll make sure to wear some nice gloves. Okay? Since they'll bite the hands that feed them, I'll make sure to wear some nice gloves. Yeah, it's all you can really do about it, all right? But I will not let someone with a poor understanding of wealth affect my personal decisions, and nor should you. That should be the backbone of your philosophy. Do not let somebody with a poor understanding of wealth affect your personal decisions. Okay, I tell this story all the time. I'm sitting there living with my dad, okay? We're living together in this one tiny little apartment, and man, are we broke. And I'm trying to start this internet business. My dad keeps coming to me, and my dad keeps saying, Jason, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think you should do this. I think you're going to fail. I don't think you're going to make it. On and on and on, right? And you know what I'd say to him? I go, Dad, you're probably right, but I'm going to do it anyway just to see what happens. And I would always say that to him. Same answer every time, okay? Just because that's the best way I could handle him, okay? Then what happens? I go out and I do what I do, become very successful, and my dad has so much respect for me, okay? So much respect for me now. Because my dad did what he never could do, stand up to his dad. And that's how it is, okay? But clearly I wasn't going to take financial advice from a guy who was living in a one-room apartment with me, whether he was my dad or wasn't my dad. But that was because I developed this philosophy first. So that's the end of the philosophy segment. Now we're going to get into some more tangible, day-to-day stuff that you can use immediately while you're developing and working on your philosophy. Incremental improvements, let's start there. I'm not a big believer in Kaizen, okay? So Kaizen really is the Japanese principle of small continuous improvement. And it became really big when Dr. Deming went over there, and they implemented this in a management process, where every single time they would try to make these slight, tiny little improvements in production. And the idea here is small continuous improvements is how you do it. All right, or like Pat Riley would say, coach, a very good coach in national basketball. He would say, you know, I want to make every guy 1% better. So if I make everybody 1% better, God, how good is our team going to be? Because if you add that up with 12 guys, that's 12% better. If we were 12% better, if we scored 12 more points a game, if we won 12 more games a year, where would we be at, right? Okay. Here is the refinement of that thinking. Small continuous improvements are valid up to a point. However, they can be dangerous if you continue to improve what really does not need to be improved. Because on the other end of the spectrum, automation means you do not try to improve it. You let it run, right? Automation to me is an acceptable standard. So not everything is made to be improved. In fact, almost everything, in my opinion, is made to be systematized till it reaches an acceptable standard. And then once it reaches an acceptable standard, it's to be maintained. When we're talking about business, okay, for personal stuff, it might be different, all right? If I wanted to be the best billiards player in the world, I might have to spend 5,000 hours getting a tiny, tiny little advantage. And that would be tangible, because maybe that would be the difference between me being first and me being second in the world, right? You know, as a wrestler, when I was a wrestler in high school, we would always say, you got to be so good that you could win a match even if the referee made a whole bunch of bad calls, right? So you might train 5,000 hours to become a half a point better for the season. And would that be worth it? If you wanted to be a state champ, it might. Now here's the difference. In sports, there's one winner, okay? When it comes to wealth, there is no winners and losers, okay? We can all be champions. We can all be gold medalists when it comes to wealth. Okay, so this is the difference. Kaizen is very powerful when it comes to certain things, but not so in business, in my opinion, for what we use it for, especially entrepreneurial businesses. In management processes, it has its place. But I'm telling you, I've seen so many internet marketers get on these Kaizen kicks because they listen to old Tony Robbins personal development tapes, and all of a sudden that's what they're trying to do, okay? Much better is to work everything with the goal of having an acceptable standard that is to be reached or that will be reached. Okay? So I say this is what I call it, improving to a point. Okay? There's a lot of things that you can improve to a point to where you have a general accepted standard. Here are the 4 that I think are most important for you to work on and that you could probably make immediate gains within the next week on. Speed of decision-making, speed of implementation, accurateness and trust of instinct, recognition of checkered flags and red flags. You get these right in your day-to-day life, everything else is pretty much inconsequential. If you get good at these 4 things, your life can change dramatically and very quickly, and you'll see those changes and benefit from those changes for the rest of your life. You know, just the rest of your life, nothing big. So let's break them down. Speed of decision-making. Here's my philosophy first behind it. It's better to make a decision right than to make the right decision. I would rather make 100 wrong decisions and then fix them than make only one right decision in that same period of time. Okay, let me say that again. I would rather make 100 wrong decisions and then fix them than make one right decision in the same period of time. This is what this quote means. It's better to make a decision right than to make the right decision. And you might say, why? Why, Jason? Why? Because you will make more money if you make a decision right than to make the right decision. That's why. Okay? Now here is the deal with all this. 99% of the decisions you'll make in business serve no additional benefit by taking longer than 60 seconds to make. Okay? Do you agree with this? Be honest with me. 99% of the decisions you'll make in business serve no additional benefit by taking longer than 60 seconds to make. Okay? If you do not agree with me on this, and so far I haven't had a no, but if you did not, here's what I would say. Every decision you make tomorrow, make a note. Just make a little scratch mark. Because you'd be amazed at how many decisions you make in a day. If you had to guess, and this would just be a guess for me, I don't know. Let's just all guess. How many business decisions do you think are made on average by you in a day, or by the average internet marketer in a day? Okay, Marie says 100, Margaret says 200, Pauline says 10 to 15, Jim says 200. I got 50, 50, 1,500, Steve says. Ken says 187. Here's my guess, okay? My guess is higher than any number that anybody's ever said yet. I would guess 5,000 easily. Easily 5,000, okay? Most of the decisions are so minor that you don't even calculate them and don't register them. But just an idea, okay? The decision to go to your email, okay? Then the decision to open your email. Then the decision to pick which one you want to read first, okay? Then the decision to decide what you're going to do after you read that email. Then the decision to do with the next email and the email after that, okay? When it comes to writing, the decision to write every single word that you write. There's so many decisions, okay? Most people forget that those are decisions because they make them instantly. Most decisions you make, you already make instantly. You just have to understand that more decisions are like that you think are important that are not important. So the best way to say this and understand this is 99% of the decisions you'll make in business serve no additional benefit by taking longer than 60 seconds to make. So let's make this practical. Somebody throw out there, go ahead and type it in now, a decision that you've been struggling to make, that you think you've been taking too long to make, that you'd be okay with me sharing with everybody. I won't say your name, but I'll share the decision. I'll share what you're stuck on right now, okay? Okay, so Kristen says hiring a designer. That's a really good one, by the way, okay? Hiring a designer, all right? So we can make that decision in 60 seconds or less. What you'll do then is hire somebody to do a really small task first, Kristen, and then you can judge the results based on that small task. Done. Decision made, right? Vivian says implementing your stuff. Okay, here's what you do, Vivian. You randomly, okay, you go through your purchases and find everything you've bought from me in the last 12 months, randomly pick something, randomly open it to a page, and then start from there. Okay? Decisions made in less than 60 seconds. I'm sorry, I used your guys' names. Somebody says now, sorry, I'm too personal, right? All right? And Vivian says, I can't seem to pull the trigger. Vivian, correct me if I'm wrong. Were you not a police officer at one point in time? Okay. Somebody says a title for a book. Here's what I do. You'll write 5 titles in 60 seconds, put them on the forum, and say, hey, which one does everybody prefer? And then go with that one. Done. Right? Lynn says, when to launch a WSO? Okay. Pick 12 different time spots over the next 4 days, throw a dart at one of them, and launch it there. Okay? Somebody says, buying a membership WSO. Pull a coin out of your pocket, flip it. Heads you buy it, tails you don't. Okay? This is how I make decisions, for the most part. All right? Now that's different. Now that's different than, say, should my company be an LLC or should my company be a corporation? And if so, should it be an S corporation or a C corporation? Okay? That's a major decision, right? That's something you don't make in 60 seconds. Right? Something along the lines of, should I use Aweber or get response from my email provider? Is that a major decision or a minor decision? A lot of people think it's major. It's not. Okay? Here is the thought behind this of why people consider it major. Okay? The thought is this. Well, gee, if I build this list and I want to switch somewhere later, I'm not going to easily bring my list over there. Okay? Here's the answer to that. Well, that's fine. Keep your $20 a month Aweber or whatever it is, and then start building your new list over here. Okay? That's what you do. And if those lists don't make you $20 a month, then you just cancel it, and now you don't have to use Aweber anymore, right? And maybe you have to go back and change some integration, but maybe you don't. Heck, we still have Aweber forms from 2008 that I use. We barely use Aweber anymore for most of my old business stuff, but we still have it because I'm not going to be able to migrate it very easily, so we just keep it. It's not a major deal, okay? But a major deal in comparison is something like the corporation versus the LLC, right? That's going to be a major deal because that affects almost every other decision in your business. And our software integrates with both of them, Lynn. Our membership stuff, almost everything we have integrates with both GetResponse and Aweber. But something like a corporation versus an LLC, that's going to that affects almost every other decision in your business. So see the difference between major and minor decisions? Minor decisions are things that are not going to really affect everything in your business. Major decisions are going to affect almost everything in your business. Okay? That's the difference. So almost every decision you can make can be made in 60 seconds or less. In fact, most of them can be made in 10 seconds or less. So here's how you actually do this, because I've always had trouble teaching this. So I tell people this. I've told people this for years, right? How many people do you think actually do this? They say, yeah, that makes sense, Jason. But then how many people do you think actually go out there and do it and start making decisions fast? Not very many. I get coaching clients all the time who have bought my products where I've specifically taught this, and now they're paying me for coaching, and they're saying, I'm having trouble doing this. I don't know what to do about this or that or this or that, right? And we have to go through it again. Okay, so it's easy to understand. It's not so easy to start doing unless you exercise your brain muscle that controls this. So here's how you do this. Tomorrow, or today if you're an overachiever, I want you to write down 20 decisions that you want to make in business. They don't even have to be big ones. They could be the small ones, like what color of font you're going to use for your next headline, right? I don't care what they are. Just write down 20 decisions, whether they're good, whether they're of any importance at all or not. Write a decision, when am I going to check my email in the morning, right? I don't care what it is. Just make 20 decisions, put them down. And then I want you to go through that list and knock off all 20 decisions in 4 minutes or less. So you're going to write down decisions like, when should I check my email first? What color should my next font be for my headline? And, what post am I going to read when I go to the Warrior Forum? Which post am I going to look for to read? Whatever, right? So write down like 20 things that will need a decision, then pull out your stopwatch and go through and do all 20 decisions in less than 4 minutes. All right? Do this tomorrow. Do this the next day. Do this the day after that. Do this again the day after that. Now what have you done? Now what have you done? You've exercised. You've exercised the brain muscle that controls this. Okay? I don't care if any decision you make is right or wrong or makes any damn difference in the world. You exercise the muscle. So now it will become much easier to start doing this second nature. Okay? Don't just do this in business. This is fun. Next time you go to rent a movie or say, here's the big problem. Oh, my God. My girlfriend has this issue. Okay? Netflix instant. Okay? Netflix is a drug to her. What do we watch? What are we going to watch tonight, right? Do this decision on that kind of stuff, okay? I'm going to watch a movie. I got 60 seconds to pick one. Go. That's fun. Do this when you order food at a restaurant. If you ever go out to eat with me, you'll find I never take more than a few seconds to decide what I want. Very rarely, because it's such a habit. I just pick something, and I'm like, okay, this sounds good. Let's go. Done. But you got to exercise the muscle. So please do it. It will change your life if you do this. Your business will totally change if you make quick decisions. Speed of implementation. There's two things we have to work for with this one. Shortening the idea to action gap. Ideally, from idea to implementation is short as possible. The second part of it, shortening the time of action to as little as possible while maintaining a sufficient amount of quality. Okay? So the first thing we practice is shorten the idea to action time. All right? So when you're starting out in business, this is actually extremely simple. Because you really don't got much going for you, right? You're just starting out. So anytime you get an idea, you act on it immediately. It's that simple. Okay? If you get the idea when you can't act on it, then you act on it the first chance you get to act on it. But almost every single idea can be acted on in some way instantly, especially with today's technology. I'm sick as a dog. I'm laying in bed. I got my damn iPad there. I got the new iPad with the dictation, and I'm dictating stuff. I wake up dead sick with an idea. Grab the iPad, dictate it really quickly into the note section of my iPad, save it, go back to sleep, right? That's some implementation at least. Then the next chance I get, I start working on it a little bit, you know? Noelle asks a wonderful question. I love this question. What do you do if you can't find the solution to your problem to implement it? Great question. Yeah, with the new iPad, JT, dictation comes right, it's built right into the iPad keyboard. It's slick. It's the same thing as Siri, same voice recognition that Siri uses. Okay, Noelle asked the question. I want somebody to try to attempt to answer it. What do you do if you can't find the solution to the problem, to your problem to implement it? And Beth, it does work well, but I have that flat Iowa accent, so maybe that helps. Okay. Some of the answers I get: Google it, ask on a forum, fake it. I like that one. Move on to the next. Okay. Give it to the universal mind. Ask for help. Kit has my favorite. Kit has my favorite. Find a workaround. Yep. Go around it, go over it, go under it, Mark says. All right? Here's my answer. To answer Noelle. What do you do if you can't find the solution to the problem to implement it? Here's my answer. There's always a solution. There's always a solution. Okay? Sometimes the solution is to stop doing it and do something else. That's a solution in my opinion. Okay? I'll tell you what I used to do all the time back in the day. Okay? Getting ready to launch a product. I can't figure out how to tie PayPal and Aweber together to where when somebody buys in PayPal, it automatically adds them to my Aweber email list. I can't figure this out. What do I do? What do I do? Okay, I didn't have Will back then. This is little Jason Fladlien all by himself. Okay? You know what I did? I didn't tie them together automatically. Okay? I just put on my download page, I said, hey, if you'd like future updates for free, sign up here. Now download your stuff. Problem solved. Right? Was that the technically correct way to do it? No. Did it take me like two seconds to do it? Yeah. Right? And nowadays it's not really a problem anymore because there's so much technology that can automatically do that for you. But that's an example of the stuff that holds people back these days. They want to do something the technically most correct way possible, when sometimes the workaround is not only infinitely easier, but in some cases it's preferred. Heck, if it was up to me, we'd still probably be doing it that way to this day. But after a while, when you grow, then you can pay other people to do that stuff, right? Or you can take a break and relax and figure it out leisurely. But oftentimes you don't have the luxury of being leisurely. And almost everybody here was like, well, you go to YouTube and figure it out. Contact customer support. They could probably tell you. Here's the problem with all that. All that takes a lot of time. And it's out of my control. So most of the times I find a workaround, an imperfect solution. All right? But it's still a solution. And that's the most important thing. So shortening the idea to action as short as possible. Most people don't take an idea and immediately put it into action because they get hung up on something that they don't know the solution for, and which is what was part of Noelle's question, which I thought was brilliant. I'm glad she brought it up. That ties it in perfectly. Okay? Yeah, and now we even build tools that do that for you automatically. Second nature, the whole email thing. But let's not get hung up on the example. The point is the important part. Okay? After you shorten the idea to action as small as possible, remember when I said when you're starting, it's easy. You do it the first moment you got, okay? The bigger you get, the harder it becomes, because typically you'll be juggling multiple things. So then the formula will eventually become you start prioritizing. Idea comes in, you put the idea into an action category with a time when you will act on it, because you have to prioritize when you're big, okay? But when you're just starting, or if you're not making a lot of money, then you act on it immediately because you don't have anything else going on. That's important. Right? Then, after you get good at that, shorten the time of action to as little as possible while maintaining a sufficient amount of quality. And we're going to talk a lot more about that here in a bit. So here's my answer to that, okay? All this can be done with deadlines. And this is similar to the quick decision making, right? Where I say 60 seconds or less, but then how come nobody does it? How many people here work religiously with their deadlines? A deadline is an integral part of your day. You practically are married to a deadline, okay? Everybody on this call should have said yes to that. You cannot function at a high level if you don't live and die by the deadline. And Jay says, I'm retired, so just getting up is a deadline. So be it. Still got to have deadlines. Okay? For Jay, it might be quite literal. Deadline, right? All right? There's a reason they put the dead in the deadline. This is serious stuff. Yeah, I don't care what you're putting on a deadline. Just put everything should have a deadline. And man, I'll beat that until it's dead in the ground. But this is how you speed up implementation. This is like the only solution I can tell you. And it's up to you to start working with your own deadlines. All right? Here's one of my favorite exercises that I just started doing recently with coaching clients. Okay, those who have trouble with deadlines, you'll love this. I want you to put a deadline on how long it will take you before you decide on putting a deadline. So you say, I'm not going to put a deadline on myself for the day until 10 a.m. Do that, okay? If you're having trouble with deadlines, start off like that. I'm not going to put a deadline on myself today until 11:26 a.m. That sounds good. And then I'll start putting deadlines on myself. Okay? Now, Beth asked a very important question. Do you beat yourself up if you do not meet the deadline? Not really, Beth. There's plenty of other people who would do that for me. Here's my answer. I really don't know the answer to that because it's so rare that I ever miss a deadline. To me, missing a deadline doesn't even seem like a possibility. It just doesn't happen. If it does happen, it's out of my control. And then why should I beat myself up? Like I missed a lot of deadlines this week because I got sick with a stupid cold, just a cold, but boy, was it killing me. So I missed a whole bunch of deadlines. But did I get mad and beat myself up? No, it was out of my control. Okay? But if it was in my control, that's a different story. But I haven't missed a deadline that I can recall that was been in my control, that was important, and who knows how long. Let's talk about this one. Accurateness and trust of instinct. Okay, instinct is a mechanical process. This is so paradoxical, isn't it? Almost everything we're talking about today is really paradoxical. This is the uncommon sense. This is the stuff that you get when you refine everything down to the level of success. Instinct is a mechanical process. The more you do something manually, the easier it is to instinctualize it. Okay? So if you want to have an instinct for saying, okay, instead of me thinking of it, somebody give it to me. What would you love to have really razor-sharp instincts on? Throw it out there. Okay? I will try not to say your first name, but I probably will anyway. Ooh, Lynn has a good one. Which clients to work with? Okay? That's a great one. Yeah, I know. I did that one intentionally, Kristen. All right. So Lynn says which clients to work with. That's a great one to be instinct about. Okay? So become mechanical with it at first, Lynn. Write down your list of criteria. These are clients who I would absolutely stay away from even if they gave me $10 billion, and these are the clients that I would love to work for even if I wasn't paid a penny. You write them down, and then play a little game in your mind where there's a waiting room. So create this movie in your mind of a waiting room, and each person walking through is sitting down, and you're interviewing them to hire them. And you got to make a snap decision on who you will and who you won't hire. So you run through this mental exercise in your mind. And it's a mechanical process, right? But eventually you'll start to recognize how you make decisions based on your criteria to the point where it becomes instinctual. It will just naturally become instinct. And then then when you realize that, it becomes much more comfortable for you just to rely on instinct alone. And for a lot of stuff, that's all I rely on. A lot of things I just rely on instinct. 99% of the PowerPoints that I write these days are purely instinct. I don't follow formulas, techniques, templates, patterns, nothing. Just purely write them out of the brain. I just know what to write next because I've done it so many times mechanically. Right? So you have to learn to trust your instincts because typically your instincts were right all along. Okay? Not always. You gotta avoid that pitfall as well. There's a lot of people who have instincts that are very bad. So you can't just blindly trust your instincts. The problem is people usually have good instincts. They just don't trust them. So what you start doing is you can't rely on instinct and you rely on mechanical processes. Then you check them against your instincts. And you will realize more often than not that your instincts are correct, so then you will learn to trust your instincts. And then you can make most of your decisions based on instincts. And that's how you reduce instincts or that's how you reduce decision-making time. That's how you reduce the time it takes you to implement an idea, and that's how you reduce the time it takes you to actually complete the implementation of the idea. All right? Now here's the other thing. Some people would like you to believe that instincts are set in stone. Okay? And JT, I'm using instincts, but I very well could have used intuition. It's just semantical for me. Same thing. It's kind of just the guiding process, the feeling underneath, not the logical portion, but the feeling that I need to do this, or I should do this, or that. Okay? But remember this, instincts are not set in stone. The instincts I had when I was 14 are vastly different than the instincts that I have now at 29. So instincts can change. And if you have instincts that you don't like, you can change them. And we will talk about that. All right? Checkered flags. This is one of the, I think, the most under talked about aspect of all of personal development. Checkered flags and, more importantly, red flags. These two things I think are the least talked about, least understood, most overlooked factors of personal development. Sufficient amount of quality is one of my favorite business phrases. I just did a consult with a guy today. Brilliant guy. I don't know if he's a 6 in 6 coaching member or not. But we determined relatively quickly, the guy loves to write, okay? But every single outsourcing job he's done, writing for somebody, has ended up taking him like 25 hours to do something that should have took 2 hours. Because he just works it to the point where, oh my God, I mean, perfectionism is an imperfect way to describe this guy's habit. He's way beyond that, okay? He passed that up years ago. And there was not much I could do to help him with the sufficient amount of quality aspect because it was so engraved in his brain. So what do you suppose I did during that consult? And this is why I get paid the big bucks. Okay? So the guy is coming to me. I didn't try to correct his perfectionism with the writing. Okay? I didn't think I could really do much to improve that. I was so ingrained into him. I don't think one call could have fixed it for him. So what did I do instead? Yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to write an answer in. What did I do to handle that problem? Okay, here's the question again. Guy spends way too long perfecting writing so he doesn't make any money as an outsourcer, and he wants help with this process. And so what did I do to help him with it? I didn't try to improve it so he could write faster. What did I do instead? Didn't give him a deadline. I thought he was, in my opinion, he was way beyond deadlines. Didn't give him the decision exercise. In my opinion, he was way beyond that. Didn't tell him to charge more. Didn't give him the good enough speech. Okay? I removed him from the equation. I set him up in an environment where he could not write. Specifically, I said, here's what you're going to engineer. And I laid out a system for him to where I said, this is how you can collect money for a job before you start on the job. You could take that money, give half that money to an outsourced worker. Now you are a monitor of sufficient quality, not a writer. But you can make a lot more money this way than you were even if you were writing. And so we spent a majority of the call helping him understand how to be a sufficient judge of quality. And so the biggest part that we had to deal with is making sure he wasn't going to step in and basically make the outsourced worker obsolete, right? I shifted his role, though, his thinking, from somebody who's a writer to somebody who's a judge of quality, but who's not allowed to edit anything. he'll have to send it back to the outsourcer if he wants any changes. That was a big part of what we talked about. And so I shifted his line of thinking from somebody who's a writer to somebody who's a judge of quality, and I removed him from the equation. Now what's going to happen if he actually does this? Okay? What's going to happen if he actually does this? He will eventually automatically improve his own writing, which was what he wanted to do. Okay? Because he will first recognize and understand what acceptable quality looks like, sufficient quality, and once he can see that clearly, then he can understand what it actually is when he does his own writing. Right? I will automatically improve his writing for him if he does that. But I'm not allowing him to write for a while. Okay? But beyond all that, even if that didn't happen, he's still in a hell of a lot better position to make money than he was before. Right? So this is what checkered flags are. Knowing what the finish line looks like. Okay? Whatever you do that's important should have a sufficient amount of quality attached to it. Okay? This is how I ask the question. Do you know what that looks like for every important task to do in your business? And I mean that quite literally. Okay? Could you paint it and hang it on a wall and recognize it? That's the litmus test. Okay? So somebody throw out, and I'll give you it. This ain't no bull. Okay? Throw out something you know in my business that I do, and I'll tell you what that painting looks like. That's sufficient amount of quality. I could give you extreme detail on it because I recognize those checkered flags. So I know what sufficient amount of quality looks like. Okay? So Chris's content writing. I already got you, Chris. What type of content writing? I've broken it down even further than that. If we're talking about sales copy, okay, I've broken that down further, but let's just say sales copy for products that are $29 and under. sales letters for products that are I'm going to sell for $29 and under. They're not going to be more than a couple pages, no more than 4 pages at most. If I can't say it by 4 pages, I can't say it at all. Furthermore, I am going to write exactly what I think when I think it, and I'm not going to stop writing because it's not that important. I'm just going to lay it out, but I'm not going to start writing until I know exactly what the sequence is. Now, it's going to take me 5 minutes at most to come up with the sequence of how that letter is going to flow. And then I'm going to sit down and write that thing from start to finish. Then when it's done, I'm going to hand it over to Will. He's going to clean up the grammatical errors, which is probably going to be 6,000 of them. He's going to flip it back to me with a couple questions. I'll answer that quickly, and then we'll roll it out. Okay? That's what that looks like. That's that process. It's very clear, isn't it? Very clear. Okay? If I can't make it clear, it means it's too big. Right? So like when Chris asked me content writing's too big. So I had to make it smaller. Okay? If you can't make a very clear thing like that, you have to make it smaller. But I know exactly what it looks like. And we could do this with everything that I do in my business. Graphic design, one of my favorite things to do. Unfortunately, I don't get to do it that much because it's just not a high-paying enough gig for the CEO. But with graphic design, oh my God, I have so many different things that I break down like that. Depending on what I'm making for certain types of things, banner ads, there's very specific fonts that I use, and there's fonts I'll never use. There's very specific color schemes that I use, and there's color schemes I never use. You know, patterns, all those things. They all have a criteria, and I can break them down. I know what the sufficient amount of quality, the end product, is going to look like exactly before I do it. Okay? This is what you have to do with everything you do in your business. So if you want to start making a whole bunch of micro websites for niche keywords, you got to know what one of those looks like for you. Okay? You got to know what that looks like. for you. So is that going to be anything between 3 to 5 pages, optimized for 7 keywords, and articles no less than 300 words but no greater than 500 words, and the design is something that I can implement and have up in 2 days or less? Is that what that looks like? Okay? Should. It should look as not necessarily exactly that, but it should be as clear as that. Now, what is the argument against that? And there is a sound argument against it. There's a very good argument against it. What is it? Somebody go ahead and type in what you suppose that argument would be, because there's a very good argument against that. It's important we understand the argument against it. So, yeah, Chris has part of it. He says, what happens if you do all that and it doesn't work? Right? Okay? Ken says it's too cookie cutter, right? Okay? Yeah, here's the biggest problem with that. It's rigid and it's inflexible. That's the biggest problem with that. But here's the beauty of that. What it lacks in being flexible, it makes up for a speed. So if you try that for a few sites and it doesn't work, guess what you do? Something else. Eventually, though, you'll stumble on something that works, and then it can work forever. Now, here's the deal. I'm not, nor have I ever been, nor will I ever be the best copywriter in the world. Okay? But I make more money than 99% of copywriters. My goal isn't to be the best copywriter in the world. My goal is to be one of the most efficient copywriters in the world. And I might be one of the most efficient copywriters in the world. Right? That's my goal. The best is, you know, the difference between, like we said, training all summer just to be a half point better than your opponent. That's the best, okay? But I don't want to be the best. I want to be the rich. I don't even want to be the richest. I just want to be rich at a level that I'm happy with. So you have to recognize exactly what success for any important thing you do in your business looks like. And that is your sufficient amount of quality. It's not going to be perfect. I don't want it to be even close to perfect. It's got to be sufficient amount of quality. All right? The other end of that is the red flags. And this just ties in exactly with what we were saying. Okay, here's the Jason Fladlien quote of 2012. This is a really good one. Quitters almost always win. Quitters almost always win. I quit more stuff than I finish. In my life, I have quit more things than I finished. Yeah, and it's just a fancy way of saying something like fall quickly, right? Fail quickly, you know? It's like this, okay? If I do something I immediately recognize that it's not going to work, the dumbest thing that I can continue to do is to continue to do it, right? I'll give you an idea. I am absolutely horrible at working on cars, okay? My dad never had a power tool in the house in my whole life. I've never touched a tool, never played with one until I was like 16 years old, okay? I could not do anything with any of that stuff. So would it make sense for me, with that severe disadvantage, to try to become a mechanic? It wouldn't make any sense, would it? Now, I could probably go and do it if I really wanted to. It doesn't make any sense, though. So if I tried to do that and realized how bad I was at it, I quit. Now, this is a problem. This seems obvious, but this is a problem. Why? Because we were raised that quitters never win. Okay? Question. What was Mark Zuckerberg's first thing he ever made? Long before Facebook. It was before Face Smash or Face Smush or whatever it was called. It was before the Facebook. Who knows, right? Whatever it was, I'm glad he didn't pursue it and run it into the ground. Instead, he stopped and did other things. Did other things, right? Quitters almost always win. Okay, your idea is recognizing the red flags. So part of the idea of this is the end result I want to get, the standard acceptable level of quality, right? The other part is how do I know when to stop? Or to put it another way, plugging a hole in a sinking ship is often better than putting a new motor on it. So many people with their internet businesses try to put a new motor on a boat that has a hole in it. Okay, that doesn't solve the problem. See, I'm quick to stop something that's not working because I've defined when I will do that before I start working on something. So this is just another fancy way of saying like this. If I want to build a new traffic system, and I want to test out a new way to get traffic, I have a fail-safe in there. I say, by 3 weeks, if I'm not getting these results, then I will blank. And that might be just stop completely, reevaluate, and decide if I want to go further, or it might be modify this thing, or it might be maintain it and try it again for another week, right? But I have these little red flags that say stop, evaluate. I have those built into things before I even begin them. Does that make sense? I always have checkpoints that say come up for error, take an objective look at this, and if it doesn't make sense, stop it. Okay? Now, this is different than, and this is the refinement of success. Okay, this is why we call this refining. This is different than somebody who tries this new thing this week and this thing next week and this thing the week after and this thing the week after, hopping from opportunity to opportunity. What's the refinement? What is the difference? Go ahead and type that in. What is the difference here? Very important principle. Here is the difference. Most people who hop from opportunity to opportunity, they have never actually defined a sufficient amount of quality. Okay? So therefore, they haven't defined a sufficient amount of quality. They don't even know what success is going to look like. That's why they're hopping around. We define a sufficient amount of quality. We know what success is going to look like. But we also have red flags that stop us to make sure we're objectively looking at it every once in a while so we don't go down a rabbit hole. This is the refinement. This is important. Okay? Now let's talk about exponential improvement. And you can take these and you can apply them to all the things that we talked about today. All right? This is where it's going to get weird and crazy and a little out there, but all of these things are exactly tangible and everybody on this call can do them. Okay? You want to talk about dramatic self-improvement. Here are the 3 things that have dramatically improved me from a personal development standpoint more than anything else in my life and in terms of results. Because yes, when I was a monk and when I meditated 8 hours a day, that was probably more effective. But I don't think in the real world, if we're not monks, I don't think we could be meditating 8 hours a day. So instead we use these things, these tools. Okay? The 3 ones that I use are sub-modalities, timeline shifting, and anchoring. Let's talk about sub-modalities first. Okay, sub-modalities are nothing more than it's a fancy way of saying the internal senses you use to represent the external reality that you perceive around you. Yeah. So I got a typo on this slide, but it basically says the internal senses you use to represent the external reality that you perceive around you. Okay, this is the reason why if you stopped 100 people on the streets at random in Iowa City, Iowa, and you asked them to describe a penny, you would get 100 different answers to something that everybody in Iowa City, Iowa probably sees on a daily basis. A penny, right? It's because of sub-modalities, the way we interpret what we perceive as reality around us. Okay, so some modalities, they actually come in 5 things. There's the smell, whatever that's called, the olfactory one, right? And then there's taste. But frankly, those aren't even worth really focusing on because these are the 3 most important ones. Visual, audio, and kinesthetic. And Kristen says audio's bad suddenly. That wasn't by design. I don't know if that's just on your end, Kristen. I think everybody else can hear me okay. So most of your world, if you see an event unfold before your eyes, you'll create a representation of that event, a memory, so to speak. And that memory will be encoded typically predominantly with visual elements, audio elements, and kinesthetic elements. Things like color, dimension, proximity, brightness, contrast, and there's others. Volume, tonality, pace, rhythm, direction, and there's others. Texture, density, pressure, and so forth. Okay, and I'm right into Kristen. There you go. Okay, so I want you to do this with me, and I know a couple people are going to have this problem, and we'll deal with it when it comes up. But here's what I want you to do. Okay, I want to think of the happiest memory you ever had in your life. And I don't want you to spend all damn day thinking about what that memory was. Give yourself 5 seconds, okay? And whatever pops up in 5 seconds is what pops up. There's got to be a really good memory you can think of that could take you less than 5 seconds to recall it, okay? Everybody got their memory? You got your memory. One of the happiest you've ever felt in your life. Remember, quick decision, quick decision. You by the way, don't tell me what it is. It's not the content that's important. I don't care. I don't care what the memory is, what's inside the memory, what actually memory it is. I just want you to make sure you have the memory, okay? Does anybody not have it? Okay, good. I'm testing you. Because if you don't have it, you missed the whole point of what we talked about earlier. Quick decisions, right? Okay. Now I want you to answer some of these questions. And I want you to type them out. Okay, the memory you have right now. Are there certain colors, okay, like dominant colors in your memory? Or is it in black and white? Is it monochromatic? Or are there a lot of colors, a little amount of colors? Okay. Here's another question. Are you in the memory? Are you seeing the memory as if it's through your eyes? Or are you watching the memory like you would watch a movie? Okay, so that's the difference between first person and third person. Okay? And is the memory, is it like a still photo? Or is it like a movie? Or is it kind of like something in between? Like a slideshow. All right? If you're in it, first person, then do the images that you're seeing, are they bigger than normal, smaller than normal, the same size as they are normally? How are those represented? Okay? And if you're seeing this in the third person, is what you're seeing, is it close to you? Is it far away? Is it surround you? Is it panoramic? Does it have rounded corners? All these kind of things. Okay? Now start listening to your memory while you're seeing it. And the sounds you hear, and there are sounds, I can hear them. I can hear your sounds, okay? Is it loud or is it quiet? Or does it fluctuate? Is it rhythmic? Like, does everything seem to have a cadence when you're listening to it in your memory, kind of like the way that I'm talking now? Or is it arrhythmic? It has no rhythm, okay? Does the sound start somewhere? Does it like start from the left and kind of work in and slope down to the right? Or does it start right in the middle and kind of just expand outward? Okay? And while you're thinking of this feeling, this memory, while you're thinking of this memory, where's the feeling in your body that's strongest? Is it in your chest? Is it on your elbow, your left pinky, your right ankle? Okay, where's that feeling at? Where does it travel to, and where does it go when it leaves? When you quit feeling it, where does it go? All right? Now, I hope you got that. I hope everybody got that. I guarantee you there's somebody that says, well, Jason, I can't see stuff in my mind. You know, I don't see anything. I can't visualize anything. All right? Well, if I wore a blindfold, I couldn't see either. All right? Take the blindfold off, okay? For you, if you're saying I'm having trouble seeing a picture, if I painted your face purple, would you like that or not? And how would you know? Okay? You would know because there's a damn picture that you created. All right? Now do you see it? Okay? So that's your happiest memory. Now let's flip the script. Clear your brain, okay? Take a white paintbrush, paint it white so you don't see anything anymore. And now think of a pet peeve, something that bothers you. All right? I'll tell you what bothers me is when somebody leaves a light on in a room and then they leave the room at the house, and I'll walk in later and I'm like, what the hell is this light doing on? You know, by the way, even though I do it myself. You know, but I pay the bills, so I'm excused, right? Well, that's a big pet peeve of mine. Okay, it bothers me. It gets me irritated for no stupid reason at all. Just frankly, why the hell should I get bothered by something like that? I shouldn't, okay, but it's a pet peeve. Now, I want you to notice the differences, not in the picture itself, not the content, okay? The colors. Are the colors different, okay? Are you in the picture now when you might not have been? Is the location of the picture or the movie different? Was one a movie and is another a still? Are the sounds similar in volume, in direction of where the sound travels? Are the feelings that you're feeling in your body, are those in a different location? Do those behave differently? Okay. Now let me ask you a question. Did anybody notice any dramatic difference in their audio, visual, and kinesthetic representation of the mental show they had going on in their mind? The difference between a happy moment and a pet peeve. Okay? Was there a dramatic difference for you in how you represented those in your mind? Okay, so for Lynn, she says the biggest thing for her was it was a lot darker. Okay? Vivian says vivid. I like that. Okay, and I don't know exactly what vivid means. What does vivid mean visually? Vivian. That's hard to say, right? Vivid, Vivian, visually. Okay? Right? Okay, so she says more colors, more details. Okay? So John says his was less visual, it was duller, and it was muted. Right? There's a dramatic difference. This is how your brain encodes memories. Okay? They attribute certain similar qualities to similar memories, and they attribute different qualities to different types of memories. So your memories of things that bug you are going to create certain visual, audio, and kinesthetic representations, and those are going to be different than things that bring you pleasure. Interesting. The first time I discovered this, I said, there's a lot we can do with this. Okay? What's the most obvious thing that springs to mind? And by the way, notice it has nothing to do with the content. I don't care if in one image you were sitting on your dad's lap and the next image you were chewing on a pencil. I just care about the qualities, the audio, the visual, and kinesthetic qualities. Okay? Yeah. The idea here is once you know the audio, visual, and kinesthetic qualities of your happy memories, you can start to apply those when you think of certain things you want to do in business, when you visualize yourself doing those things. That's the most powerful way to use this. So if you say, man, tomorrow I got to sit down and write a sales letter, Jason, I say, great. Pull up that happy memory. Okay, now notice the audio, visual, and kinesthetic qualities and apply those same qualities when you create a visual picture now of you writing that sales letter tomorrow. Does that make sense? So what if when you wrote that sales letter tomorrow, it had the exact, if you're visualizing it right now, had the exact same colors, had the exact same fluidity of movement, had the exact same rhythm of audio, had the exact same feeling start in the exact same place in your body and travel the exact same way, right? Do you suppose you would feel the same way about having to write that letter tomorrow as you did about the happy memory that you just thought? Would that be fair to say? This is high-level ninja stuff. High-level brain ninjutsu stuff. Okay? It will get to a point, Chris, because I saw your question. It will get to a point where this will happen automatically. Okay? You're not there yet. You're just a white belt. You're not quite a black belt. Okay? It will happen automatically. Right now, you have to do it manually. Okay? Now here's where it gets even funner. This is the best part of all. Since it's your mind, you can tweak it however you want to, these pictures and these movies and these things we're creating. So when Vivian says to me, more colors, more details, it was more vivid. That's what Vivian says to me, okay? Her happiness was more vivid. What would happen if we even made it brighter, Vivian, your happy memory? Pull that happy memory back up, make it brighter, put even more color into it, and even bring up the detail even more. Now what happens? She says, I'm going to faint. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Many of the things, you can take your happiest memory, and if you tweak it, if you tweak the right visual components, audio components, and kinesthetic components, you can make it even better. You can make it feel even better than it already does. Yeah, it's possible. You do it all the time. Okay? Most people do this the opposite way, unfortunately. By default, they'll take a memory and they'll make it worse. They'll make it darker, thicker. They'll have their mom's nagging voice in the background that they used to hear when they were a child, and they'll find all these kind of creative ways to make themselves feel worse automatically. But nobody thinks to do this the opposite way. Take your best memories, churn them up, make them brighter, make them beautiful, make them bigger, make them stronger, make them have beautiful melodies playing behind them. You might as well, it's your mind. Hell, you do this to your television, right? You turn the brightness up, the brightness knob, the contrast knob. You change the channel, you turn the volume up. Why can't you do this for your mind, right? Zoom in, zoom out, all that kind of stuff. Take that feeling that you have in your body, just double it right now. You might as well. What else you do it? Double it again, okay? You could take any memory you have or anything that you have coming up that you want to visualize, and you can churn up the feeling of excitement, of happiness, of confidence, whatever you want, just by using what we were talking about. And I'm kind of scared because Vivian says, I'm going to faint. She had a smiley face, and then she just left. Is everybody else okay? All right? Now, this is weird stuff, okay? This might be freaking some people out. This is not normal stuff. This is crazy stuff. But does it work? It's the most powerful way I know to make change as fast as possible. So somebody says, well, Jason, I can't do a deadline. I still can't quite get that. Okay? Here's what you do. You create a picture or a representation of a time when you were right on. Everything was on point. You aced it. You knocked it out. Okay? And you recognize the visual, the audio, and the kinesthetics. Now you take that with what you want to put a deadline on, and you put those same audio, visual, and kinesthetical traits, and tell me what happens. Okay? Then if you churn it up, if you make it stronger, more powerful, mess with stuff until you feel even better about it, now you're unstoppable. Okay? And it works much better if I was sitting right in front of you. You know why? Because I can tell when you lie. Okay? I just look at your body language. And if you're like, yeah, Jason, I feel it. Bullshit, you feel it. I don't hear it in your voice. I don't see it in the color in your cheeks, you know? Your eyes didn't light up, okay? So you can half-ass this if you want to. Why, though? I mean, really, just take the time to go through the paces, and you'll know it works if somebody can look at you and say, dang, look at him or look at her. You know, they can just see more vibrance coming off of you. That's how you know the stuff is working, okay? If you've ever been with me at a seminar, and you'll see this if you ever go to a seminar, how I can have a group of people crowding around me and just listening to me and hanging on every word. I mean, I can barely go to the bathroom sometimes. This happens at seminars. I don't know if anybody's ever seen me at a seminar and seen that happen. Well, a lot of the reason that happens is because some of it's the knowledge that I'm dropping, right? But most of it's the way that I do it, with the tonality, right? With the excitement, with the body language that's congruent with it, that gets everybody else caught up and excited with it. That's why I do it, and that's why a lot of these other speakers are like, man, Jason, how do you always do that? Okay? That's how I do it. Now, I do it externally, okay? You can do this internally. Same thing. So you start internally, and it will absolutely permeate externally to those around you, okay? So I'll just give you an example. This works for me pretty much 90% of the time. 90% of the time when I got something I got to do, I have a choir of big, beautiful black women singing gospel in my mind, telling me how well I'm going to do what I'm about to do, all right? And I got this movie playing of me doing whatever task I'm about to do. And, I mean, the movie is so beautiful that if I was actually able to record it and put it on video, it would probably win an award for cinematography. It's so beautiful. I quiver in ecstasy if I think about it long enough, okay? And this is something that happens for me automatically now. It's something I used to do mechanically, but now it's just secondary. It's just who I am because I've done this so many times, okay? Now, every so often, I'll have to go back in and do some exercises because it will slip. Got to reboot, you know, and reset it again, and then I'm off to the races. Sometimes people say, man, Jason, you're so confident when you're talking, okay? When you speak, all those things. It's because I got this choir in my brain telling me how damn good I am at this stuff. Beautiful. Beautiful voices speaking to me about how well I'm going to be able to do this, whatever I'm going to be able to do. That's how I do it, okay? And JT says, what if it gets boring? What do you do then? You change the channel, JT. You change it until it gets exciting. It should never be boring. You can always change the picture. You can always change the audio tonality, okay? One of my favorite ones is I would visualize myself in the ring with Rocky, and I would be beating him up, right? And then I would take that feeling and how I'd represent that, and I would apply those attributes to whatever task that I wanted to do and do really well in business. I mean, you just make the stuff up. Just have fun with it. It's supposed to be fun. That's when you know it's working. Okay? If you do nothing else, if everything else we did is too kind of weird, too like new for you, just do this one thing. Change your inner tonality. Okay? I bet almost everybody on this call still hears. Maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your dad. You hear that voice, you know? Jason Michael Fladlien, get in here now. I can't do it because I just lost my voice the other day because of my cold. You know, that nagging voice. Why is that still in your brain? Why are you still hearing your mother or father speak to you like a child? There's no purpose for that other than to make yourself feel bad. So don't turn it down, mute it, just like you would a television. Hit the mute button, okay? This is the most important thing that you can do for change when it comes to this stuff, intertonality. I don't care if you call yourself a worthless shit, okay? If you do so in the voice of Morgan Freeman, tell me you're not going to feel good, okay? How are you going to feel bad if you're putting yourself down but doing it in a beautiful voice? It's incongruent. And of those two, which is more powerful, verbal or nonverbal? Nonverbal is many times more effective than verbal. So tonality is easier to change than content, and it's more effective. Most people do affirmations, right? I will tell you affirmations are effective, but they're very, very little effective. Affirmations don't have much effect. They're not that good. In my opinion, affirmations are a waste of time. I would rather have you practice saying, I'm the worst person in the world, but saying it with the strongest tonality possible, than saying a positive affirmation with weak tonality. You know, most people say, oh, I can do this. Darn it, I deserve this. I'm strong. I'm passionate. I'm ready, you know. No, you're not. That's an affirmation of crap, right? Listen to my tonality when I teach these things. Do I ever sound timid? Do I ever sound where I'm not excited and enthused and ready to take action and wanting to do this stuff? And wanting to teach you so you can do it too, right? That's the difference, okay? Tonality is far more important than content of what you say. So forget affirmations, all right? Focus on tonality. Now work on your inner tonality, and your external tonality will take care of itself, okay? Chris says, do you shout in the mirror to pump yourself up? Nah, I don't have to, Chris, okay? By the way, there's a difference between being pumped up and being confident, all right? And maybe your style is to be like a hoorah, rah, rah person. I'm not a hoorah, rah person. I'm extremely passionate about what I do, though. But I'm not going to make you stand up at a seminar, you know, and do one of those old school seminar exercises or anything like that. Inner tonality. Okay, and Chris, no, I don't listen to subliminal music. I used to listen to paraliminals back in the day, and they can be effective, but I don't want to get off topic. Okay, here's something that's a little crazy. I'm not going to spend too much time, but I'm going to plant the seed in your mind. It's called timeline shifting. Okay, I know at least half of you won't get this right away because it's super advanced, but I'm going to teach it anyway because I know one day it will come in handy, and one day you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm glad Jason taught that. Okay. Let me ask you a quick question. How is the passage of time represented as having occurred? So on a movie, you're watching a movie or a television show, how do they show the passage of time? You ever think about this? What's the most common way that they do that? Somebody answer. Okay. Besides, like, let's just say we're not talking about like the content of the aging of the actors and things of those natures. Yeah, Lynn's got it. The calendar flipping, right? We'll see a calendar pages being torn off, or we'll see a clock with the time moving forward or backwards if we're going back in time, right? The reason we do that is because time, you can't represent it visually. You can't. You have to create a representation to symbolize time passing. That's interesting because time is the ultimate equalizer. Okay? We can see visual cues, but for the actual time passing itself, they have to use some sort of representation because you can't show it visually. So how do we encode time in our mind then if we can't do it like we can say, okay, this is what a car looks like. So I know that this is a car. Right? How can we do that? Okay, so here's the exercise I want you to do. Okay? And some people will be able to do it and some people won't right now. That's okay. Don't freak out. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to create a little movie in your mind of when you brushed your teeth last. So think about the last time you brushed your teeth. Hopefully it wasn't too long ago. Okay? And I want you to see where that image is at in your mind. The location of that image or movie or whatever representation you have. And I want you to literally point to it as if it were actually outside of your brain. Okay? So it might be in front of you. It might be up to the right. It might be down to the left. It might be behind you. It might be to the right of you. It might be to the left of you. Okay? Point to it, though. Now, I want you to clear that image out, right? So, white paper over it. Clear your mind. Now, create the same image again. The same damn place you brushed your teeth last, but see yourself 10 years younger brushing your teeth. And I want you to point to that image. And finally, do this one last time, only this time 10 years older than you are currently, brushing your teeth. In the same place. Like if you're brushing your teeth in your bathroom today, see yourself 10 years older brushing your teeth, and then I want you to point to that image. Okay? Now, this shouldn't take long because your brain can create images in faster than the speed of light. It's called the speed of thought. If you did this correctly, I guarantee you 1,000% that those three images were in three separate locations that you pointed to. Am I right, by the way? Did anybody, like, were they the same location for anybody? All three of them? If they were, you got the content mixed up with the location. Okay? Try it again. I don't care. The content is not important. What's important is the representation of yourself young, old, and your age now. And then notice the location of where those images are spatially in your mind. Yep. Okay? So, yeah, I'm getting all kinds of different answers, which is interesting. This is how your mind organizes time. Okay? Your mind literally organizes time by using space to spatially represent different periods of time in your brain. Okay? So if you did this and went even further back, 20 years back, then 20 years forward in time and plotted your lines, you would have a timeline. Okay? Here's my timeline. It's weird. Okay? And it's different than yours. Everybody has a different timeline. And this isn't a perfect representation because it's not just left to right. It actually is a little bit front and back. It slopes. It's weird. My timeline now is not directly in the middle, is it? It's slightly off to the right. That's weird. Huh. You know? The younger I get, the more it seems to be over here. Although it's not a perfectly sloping down line either. You notice that? It actually goes up a little bit. So top of the left is when I'm young. Bottom right is when I'm old. Now here's something else that's interesting. From 40 to 80, it's only this much space. But from 20 to 40, that's a dominant amount of space. So what does this tell you about me as a thinker? How do I think? How do I process things? As a person, I what? I typically live in the present, right? And it doesn't matter if I've lived those later years or not. It has nothing to do with it because I've lived them in my timeline. I visualized them. So I'm an in the present type of person. Okay? I think about the immediate past, and I think a little bit about the future. But I'm pretty much in the present. Okay? And the farther back I go, and the farther forward I go, the closer the spots get. Okay? Not everybody's like that, by the way. There's a lot of people I know who their dots for the present are really close, and then in the past they're far apart. It's just who I am and who you are. Okay? I know people who their timelines are forward and backwards. And so they can't see the past because it's behind them. They literally can't see it unless they turn around and look. Okay? By the way, these aren't fixed. You can always change your timelines. I'm not going to get into that today. Okay? I'm just going to show you one little cool trick you can do with your timeline. Once you figure out how you organize time in your brain, you can kind of hack it. So let's say, for example, the happiest I ever was in my life was when I was 5 years old. Okay? And Kit says, why is your timeline pointing down? It doesn't really matter, Kit. It has no indication of good or bad or positive or negative. It's just how the brain organizes it. Yeah. But let's just say I was happiest when I was 5. Okay? So I know where 5 years is located spatially in my brain. What if I did this? What if I took that same image, that same memory I have of when I was 5 and I was happy, and dropped it in the location when I was 1 year old, and when I was 10 years old, where I was 20 years old, drop that in my now location, drop that when I'm 40, when I'm 50, when I'm 60, and when I'm 80. Oh, that's cool, John. John just gave me a really good description of his timeline. Yeah. What have I just done? You know how many people, first of all, were their past? Their past, like they're haunted by their past. You know, they keep going back to old. You know, the past like bums a lot of people out, right? Well, I just fixed that. If not if maybe just temporarily, but so be it. I've just changed how I felt about the past. I've just made sure I felt good and positive and excited about the future and now. That's what I just did with timelines. Okay? Now let me just tell you, yours might not be left to right. For example, if you go to Japan, guess what they are? They're right to left. Do you know why that's typically common? Why Japan's timelines go right to left? Year 1 starts on the right, year left starts on the left, or like year 80 on the left, because they read right to left. Okay? What about if we go to like Middle East, like like Saudi Arabia and those areas? They typically go from top to bottom, because that's how they organize their timelines. Yeah, up and down. Yep. Okay? Drug addicts, you will find, like heroin addicts, they typically will go front and back. The past is behind them. And since they can't see the past, they keep going back and using again and keep relapsing and making mistakes, which for those types of people, you do stuff where you work on moving the timeline. You know, you put a little mirror up, okay, so that way it reflects back and they can see the past, okay? A lot of people, it's even more detailed than I could put on a 2D sheet. There's 4 dimensions, you know. But here's what I want you to start doing. Modify your timeline with the most pleasant experiences you've had by placing them in the past, present, and future. And here's what I do. First, you start slow. So you say, okay, 1 year, you drop the image in, kind of like you drag and drop a file onto a folder on your computer. Then you do it for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, right? Then you say, okay, clear your mind again. Then go back and do it, but do it a little bit faster. 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, right? Then go back again and do it a little faster. 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Then go back again and do it faster. 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Then go back again and do it faster. This whole exercise will take you 2 minutes a day. Shouldn't take you longer than 2 minutes a day. Do this for 1 month. What I did, I visualized an image of me having an insane amount of money, being completely rich, right? And then I just dropped that in my timeline. Okay? Just dropped it in my timeline. Hell, I was rich when I was 1 year old. 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Run it again. Do it as fast as possible. If you get good at this, you can cycle through your timeline 100 times in less than a minute. Just keep running through it. Pretty cool. Okay? And by the way, you can create multiple timelines too. Okay? Again, I'm not going to get into that because you don't need to go that far. Okay? Beth says, what if we don't remember much of the past? Who cares? Your brain stores every part of the past, regardless of whether you can consciously recall it or not. All that matters is we're dropping it into your timeline. It's how you feel better about the past. It's how you feel better about the future. Okay? This is very powerful stuff. Final thing, okay, and I'm going to run through this relatively quickly. Anchoring. So let's say you lost your virginity to the song The Hokey Pokey. And then years later, when you were happily married and had children, you took your firstborn to their first party that their friend was having, and then they played the song The Hokey Pokey. That song is going to anchor certain triggers. It's going to trigger certain feelings. Maybe pleasure for you, maybe shame. I don't know, right? But how is it that a song, years later, could trigger instantly feelings when you hear it? It's through anchoring. That's how this happens. Now, anchors a lot of times can be created immediately. Typically, the stronger the stimuli, the easier it is for an anchor to be set, for example. And to really make this colorful so you won't forget it, it only takes one bite out of a dog turd to realize that that's something you never want to try again. I'm using graphical representation, so this way I'm anchoring this into your mind by using such graphical representations. Okay? Most of us don't have to try it because we already know it's bad because somebody else has already told us. However, some things might happen 6,000 times before an anchor is set. And procrastination is typically like that. So, by the time you get to second grade, you've already probably processed 6,000 instances where you had to wait in school to do something. And that's very easy to then anchor and habitualize into waiting later on in life for things that you shouldn't have to wait for. It's hard to separate the two. Some anchors are set that way. Here's my favorite anchor of all time. I want to anchor something to the sound of keys being pressed on my computer keyboard. You know why? Because I hear that damn thing every day, right? Click, 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 click. If I'm going to hear it all the time, why not anchor something to it? So the best feeling I can describe, because it's not a real feeling, it's really a mixture of multiple feelings, because it's my brain. I can make up whatever the hell I want, right? But let's just call it fulfillment. So every time I hear that sound of the keyboard being pressed, a little zap of fulfillment radiates through my body. So naturally I want to hit, tap the key again, tap some more keys, tap some more keys, okay? Unfortunately, I need to reevaluate this and fix this a little bit because my problem is I didn't really put a fail-safe to this anchor because I've now worked myself sick 3 times this year already because it's became too pleasurable for me. So, I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But I have anchored the feeling, a really pleasurable feeling to the tapping of the keys, that sound, and also even staring at a computer monitor. Okay? That's what you can do with anchors. This is how you create them. Okay? One way you could do it would be like this. If you wanted to stop eating chocolate, I could come by and punch you in the face after every time you took a bite of chocolate. Okay? Eventually, that would anchor the feeling of just by thinking about chocolate, you would feel uncomfortable. So therefore, you, after a while, wouldn't even think of chocolate anymore. And you definitely wouldn't eat it. That is an anchor. That's not how I recommend you set up anchors, but that's basically all there is. You link something that normally isn't linked to something else. So a better approach is something like this. Let's say you wanted to anchor confidence or some feeling to the sound of keys being pressed on the keyboard. Here's what you do. You think of a time when you were absolutely rock solid confident. You absolutely were sure. And if nothing else, here's the best thing to think about. Are you sure the sun's going to come up tomorrow? Right? Is the sun going to be there tomorrow? I'm pretty sure we're all confident that the sun's going to be there tomorrow. All right? So then look at how you're representing that in your mind. Amplify it, right? Turn the volume up, the brightness up. Make it bigger if you want to, whatever makes it stronger or more powerful to you. Drop it all across your timeline, right? While you're doing this, get yourself really pumped up internally. Your body language will change if you're doing this right. You get yourself all jacked up, dropping it all over your timeline. You got that big picture in your mind going. Then you sit down, you type one word, and you stop. Now clear your mind. Now do it again. Get that picture back in your mind, amplify it, drop it across your timeline, get yourself feeling really good, really like quivering. Then you sit down and you type 2 words. Now you do it again with 3. Then you do it again with 4. Then you do it again with 5. Then you do it again with 6, 7, 8, 9, up to 10. Then you're done. Okay? Then if you want to, you can do it tomorrow. And then if you want to do it, you can do it again the next day. Eventually, though, if you did this, after a while, you'll know when you don't even need to do it anymore. It'll just be automatic. That's all it takes. And now all of a sudden you hear the typing of keys starts to trigger those feelings. Okay. Though the first time you do it, just do it the way I said it. The day 2, if you want to do it again, this time squeal with the light when you begin typing. So when you type that first word, go, ooh, you know? And then you stop, you do it again, you build up the image, you get excited, you drop it across your timeline, and when you type down to type 2 words, go, ooh, you know, and then you stop. Okay? And you do this all the way up to 10 words. Now we're intensifying the anchor, so that way it'll be set better by adding audio to it. Okay? So now we're not just the audio, the external audio that we're hearing from the keyboard, but internal audio, the vibrations of our own body when we're saying ooh, right? Then the day after that, this time put a picture of who you think is the sexiest person in the world. Look at that while you squeal with the light, going ooh, and typing in your first word, listening to the click-clack of the keys after you created that image. And then you stop. And then you do it with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 10 words. You will be a machine of pleasure by the time you're done with this. Just sitting down at the computer will excite you and make you happy to go to work and start creating stuff. That's all you need to do. You can see I'm a very practical person. I'm very technique orientated. If I want personal development, I want it step by step, and that's what this is. Eventually, if you do this right, just the sound of the squeal or looking just at the picture is enough to trigger that feeling. Then pretty soon, just thinking about doing it will be enough. And then pretty soon it'll just be automatic. They'll be linked. Now, we're about to wrap up, so let me just give you a little bit of a warning. First of all, this stuff is not natural. This is not how we were wired to think. All right? That's why it's so effective, because it's so different. Okay? Now, this stuff does take practice. It's not something you do immediately. It's just like sex. You get better the more you do it, hopefully. Okay? And this stuff isn't permanent either, just like bathing. Okay? You don't bathe once and say, okay, I'm done. You do it over and over again. Okay? The final thing you have to remember is this is a tool. This is not some sort of magic pill. This is not something that's going to replace everything else you need in life. This is a tool that you should use, just like I use PowerPoint for this presentation today. PowerPoint itself wasn't the reason this presentation was the way that it was, but it was a tool that helped me communicate. And that's what I taught you today. It's a tool to help you communicate better with yourself. All right? So here's the conclusion. Any business issue can be solved through some sort of personal development, which will help you then solve the business problem. Now, every business should be built around enhancing you personally, okay? Enhancing your personality. So ideally, your business makes you wealthy both in terms of finances and in terms of fulfillment. And if you're doing that, then, man, what else can you ask for? And I think the homework's pretty obvious at this point. Okay, so we went about 2 hours and 10 minutes, okay? I'll stay around and answer a few questions, but my voice is going out because I just got back from that cold. Kit says, what books have you been reading on this? Kit, really, I listen to a lot of, it's a mixture between, it's a synthesization, I guess, of Bandler stuff, Milton Erickson, hypnosis stuff, and just my personal tweaks and me developing my own stuff based on those guys. But honestly, I'm telling you, if you want to read all that stuff, you can, but it's really just for intellectual satisfaction. The problem with getting too deep into this stuff is it can be, sometimes you do it for its own sake, right? I don't want you to use it for its own sake just to use it. I want you to use it as a tool to help you. And I pretty much gave you the bare essence, the essence of just what you need. Anything after that is just kind of, you're being selfish. You're just doing it for yourself, not for a tool to improve with business. Well, all right. Thank you, everybody, for being here on this wonderful Friday. I think they're getting my mom's birthday party started upstairs, so I'm probably needed up there. Thank you so much again for being here. We'll try to get this recording posted soon. We should be able to do it quick because my main man, Dave, is here. I already sent him over the PowerPoint slides, too. And I will see you again relatively soon. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.